My name's Shane. I'm with wildsecrecy.org.
My name is Raymond Schwab, and my children have been kidnapped by the Department of Children and Family Services.
Yeah, we spoke with you last month. What's changed since then? Has it got any better, any worse?
Well, it's definitely getting worse, and we're we're seeing how broad this problem is. I mean, we've been aware of this from the beginning, that this is a national issue, because from the beginning when our kids were taken, we've been active in helping other people, and so we'd get calls from around the country and try to assist other people in their own cases, and saw this common pattern across the board like I said before, when you have states with different jurisdictions and policies and how their child services are run, but you see this common theme of depriving parents of their children and their due process and their rights in such a similar manner. You know that there's something going on greater than just a state that's wrong. Now, one thing that I don't know if I mentioned last time is that apparently Mr. Brownback, the governor of Kansas's wife, was a foster care child. And I found some reports where she did a book with some other foster care kids where she talks about how foster care saved her life and how Kansas should be the model for the entire nation. And if you look at other articles about Brownback becoming governor of Kansas, you know, they talk about his program or his model for government being an experiment that they wanted to implement on a national scale. And I would even put out there that that experiment was in tyranny. And one thing that I've seen with these court systems, so what's happened recently is a while back, a news station called KSNT put out a leaked court transcript. We didn't leak it. We've been trying to comply with the law, even though they're not complying with the law, so they can't come back and get us on something. But in that transcript, they admit back then that they took my kids over medical cannabis. Now, they've thrown out a ton of different allegations, you know, that we're drug users with meth, that we abandoned our kids, just whatever they can throw at a parent, they're going to do. And all of those have been unsubstantiated. And so to even go back to those is irrelevant. I mean, the case was presented for that. Even the state, who is good at finding evidence against parents, found no substantiating evidence for these allegations. We've disproven them, right? And we've contended from the beginning that a lot of this was political, to use my kids in Kansas's war against medical cannabis, because that's what they're doing. They've sued the state of Colorado, saying that Colorado's marijuana is coming into their state, and they want to, you know, the attorney general there's filed a lawsuit. I think it got thrown out, but I'm not sure. You know, they're profiling vehicles coming out of Colorado as temp tags. They'll just pull you over and search you. They don't care about your rights or due process there. And um, you know, so we've seen this pattern of Kansas waging war on this idea that cannabis is medicine. Well, in one of the transcripts, the prosecutor admitted, we took these kids over medical cannabis. On page 49, you can still go to the KSNT article. It says court documents shed light on Schwab case. Well, I just got a letter today. They went ahead and had a hearing without my wife or I present. At that hearing, my wife's attorney quit because she had been notified that she has been sued federally. I've sued everyone that's touched my kids, every agency, every social worker almost, and the attorneys, because I'm my case is that it's a conspiracy to deprive parents not only of their due process but of their parental authority, and all of these people are working in concert to do that. And we think we have a very good case to prove that, because unlike a lot of parents who are really overwhelmed by this system, from the beginning, I was gathering evidence on them because I knew that they were trying to railroad us. But anyways, so in that article, they go ahead.
The way it sounded, were you saying basically y'all's attorneys were pretty much working with them instead of with y'all?
I wouldn't even say pretty much. Absolutely, they were. That's why um, every attorney that we've had, I'm my own representative right now. I have been for some time now. That's where we actually got it overturned, where they say now, you know, I'm a legal cannabis patient in Colorado. I have a license to grow, whatever. And I finally got the judge to admit that we can lawfully do that without them having consequences against our visits and things. but it took 10 months to get to that point. They do everything they can to frustrate parents from getting anything on the record. And now that I'm in the, we just finished our Supreme Court petition to ask the Kansas Supreme Court to review our case because the Court of Appeals openly lied and added evidence to the record, which you can't do in an appeal. Even I can't do that. I could have exculpatory evidence. I can't say, look, this proves that I'm innocent in an appeal. They only work with what's on the record. They added to the record. And so from the attorneys to the judges to the appeals court in this system in Kansas, there is a high level of corruption to where they take advantage of parents not knowing their rights. But no, the timeline where from the beginning I was telling my attorney, you guys are trying to deprive me of my due process. We're supposed to have a hearing in 72 hours. You have my children. I haven't seen any documentation why. It took them 18 days to have a hearing. Now, mind you, someone kidnaps your children 18 days before you even get the allegations against you. And
You can only hold someone for 48 hours.
And the Kansas statute is if they take kids into protective custody or temporary custody, they have to have a hearing within 72 hours. How they got around it is they had a hearing without us present and said, oh, we had it, we didn't know you weren't here, and then rescheduled it for 18 days out. They do everything they can to not obey the law. And that's kind of where we're concerned now is because, so the news gets this document leaked. We didn't leak it. And it says clearly in there they took our kids over medical cannabis. And because of this smear campaign that they've started against us, saying that, my son allegedly wrote this letter, which I believe he did under coercion. I can disprove everything in that letter through documentation, and I have. And that we modified the court transcript and leaked it to the press. And I believe the reason they sent me this letter, they're threatening criminal penalties on us, which I told them, go ahead, arrest me. I didn't leak anything to the press, and I didn't modify any court documents. So, that's just another, proof of your corruption, that you're trying to create a case where none exists. But we believe they're going back through the record and they're modifying it themselves. These court hearings aren't recorded. They're transcribed. So if they can go back and modify some of these records, because I don't know why else they would say that what is listed on that court transcript has been modified, except it supports our story, that everything they've been doing initially after the allegations were unsubstantiated were about medical cannabis, and they're trying to deny us lawful medicine in our home state when they had no jurisdiction, and they're trying to change the narrative. And they're trying to do it in a criminal manner where they don't realize I have a lot of the documents. Even though we haven't been leaking stuff, I've been getting stuff through the grace of God, court papers, court documents, police reports for my own case that people here or there have just given to me. And so they don't even really realize how much I have. So in one sense, it's good that they're trying to do this. It shows how desperate they are. But on another side, it should put a concern in everybody. Because as I've stated time and time again, I believe that our case is a precedent-setting case because we have evidence of corruption from the social worker level clear into the Court of Appeals and the executive government level all the way through. There's 27 people and agencies listed in our federal suit for a reason. I have evidence of their collusion almost every step of the way. If these people manage to silence us, if they manage to shove my case under or stop us in some manner, I honestly believe, just like they did with our protest, they'll backstop it where nobody can get as far as we've gotten, because they'll change their policies, like where they don't communicate by email anymore. I have, hundreds of emails demonstrating this correspondence between me, attorneys, caseworkers, executive staff at DCF. I have recordings, I have video, and they're going to make sure no one can ever do that again. I promise you that, because when they denied our 30-day extension on our permit in Kansas, which they said they would not do, they did anyways. They went back and changed the policies while we were up there so that no one could ever camp up there again. And I know that's what they're going to do with everywhere where we've chinked in their armor. If we don't have a victory that changes precedent and gets agencies to look at these people on a national level, then I truly believe, and this is not alarmism, it's what I've seen, nobody's kid is going to be safe. They're going to be so empowered to go and steal kids. When someone's exposed them to the level we have and nothing happens to them, you know, arbitrary power concedes nothing. It's just going to take more and more, more and more, you know.
I mean, a lot of what we've come across, it looks like they go after people with the intentions of hoping they do not know the law. And when they come across someone, like yourself, who knows the law, who knows how to cover himself, then that person's the one they tend to go after the hardest.
Which is true because we're the ones that are going to set precedent that will get them in trouble. You know, if this goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, what they rule on my case could change the whole dynamic of them stealing kids, which will affect multiple industries. You know, the counseling industries, all these state-run classes that parents have to take and shell out money for. There's so much money going in and out of this system that alteration in the law where they're not capable of stealing kids as they are now really impact economically a lot of industries that are profiting off this child trafficking. And they do, they prey on people's ignorance of the law, which is why this is so criminal. When you have a governmental system victimizing people they're there to protect them. They take an oath to protect their rights. They take an oath to defend these people, both their attorneys, even the judges are supposed to have some level of judicial neutrality where they're not for the state or for the defense. No, everything they've done has been to railroad us, deprive us our due process, deprive us our constitutional protections, and damage my children. My son is still in a psychiatric institute getting abused. Still, and what does a parent do? I mean, I know what I want to do, which I think any man in his mind could answer that question without me having to say it. And I know I can't because they win, which makes it even more frustrating that here I am not able to protect my children. I can't appeal to any course of law because they just ignore it. The federal courts are barely paying attention. Other federal agencies won't do anything to challenge these people, and it really is out of control. And if the people of this country don't start stepping up and exposing these people and stopping these people, they're going to get worse and worse and worse. Whenever you have a secret court operating in a country that claims to be a constitutional republic that is depriving people of their children and their liberties, there is cause to be extremely concerned. And these aren't just claims. Like you said, you can do the research. It's happening every day by the thousands. I mean, not thousands every day, but
The numbers are in the thousands.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just the kids getting taken. That's how many families have been destroyed.
How many families are financially broken over it in general? That's a lot of what we see is the families end up coming out, completely upside down, losing house, homes, and everything. And it kind of seems in an effort, or that's their effort, is to make you lose your house, your home, and everything. That way, that's their justification to keep the kids, is you can't support them.
Exactly, and they do that. They put a lot of pressure on you, and they do it to kinship placement too. So, like if kids went to grandma, they'll put a lot of pressure on grandma, who shouldn't even have younger children. You know, if that's happening, then something's broke down in the family system. If grandma's taking care of them, either, you know what I'm talking about. And so they may not even have the stamina as a young adult would to keep up with these kids and all the demands that the state's asking, and they'll intentionally overwhelm the families so then they can disqualify them because they only get the federal funding if they place these children outside of their kinship structure. So they have I even have a recording from just the other day where I was meeting with the DCF agency in another state where I told them, I'm not allowing you to come into my life and come into my home and evidence gather. And the caseworker goes, no, you don't understand. We used to do that. That was our policy to disqualify people, but now we work for the family. What? And the fact that he would admit that, even though, like, they do this stuff openly because they know when it comes to kids, people want to be cautious, which is good, but it's allowed them a level of access into people's lives. Anyways, yes, they purposefully try to disqualify families. and they make it hard. I mean, look at me. I had a federal job. I was getting transferred here, working for the Department of Veteran Affairs, helping fellow vets get access to care and to help them with their billing questions and issues. And they destroyed my career. I am in the middle of another federal action because of all the time I had to take off. I lost my job unjustly, and I'm fighting for my job back even. I don't know how people withstand the pressure of it's impossible. If it wasn't for the grace of God in my life, I wouldn't be able to do it. I just know my only other option is to give up, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give up on my kids. I'm not going to continue to victimize them. So, yeah, I would just encourage people to continue to look at this issue, and especially if you have children, or if you live in a state that's broke or poor. Those seem to be the worst states where they use this as some kind of revenue stream to keep their government afloat. The government has to use people as sources of capital and revenue to keep its existence validated, and they're definitely creating issues and destroying families to justify their existence across the board. And Kansas is not the only one. I have yet to hear of a state whose Department of Children and Family Services is not acting in some kind of secret, tyrannical manner to remove kids.
I mean, unfortunately, like you said, it seems that children are becoming a revenue. And it makes, I mean, sadly, it makes sense for them to target the neighborhoods that are the poorest because they don't have the means to fight back. They don't have the means to gain exposure. They don't have, any kind of help whatsoever. The government seems to make less off of these people because they don't pay as much in taxes. So that's it just appears that's their way of getting money out.
Yeah, and really and I think that's why it's reaching a level of attention that it is right now, is because they're becoming so emboldened to not matter who they. I mean, we people who formerly worked for DCF, they went after them, their grandkids, their children, because once they get a hold of that, these private companies come in, and then it doesn't matter. As long as they have their system locked down, or they know they can deprive you of your due process and liberty, and they're successful at that, if you have money or not. I mean, I have multiple attorneys engaged on the periphery that are even scared to get involved because they'll go after attorney licenses if they're successful. They may win this one case, and then these people that are running this child trafficking system will go after them in a number of ways till they get them disbarred. And so even high-level attorneys have had a really hard time getting them to get engaged, even with the level of evidence I have, which again is why we're appealing to the people of America and saying, look, we got to get the information about this case out. People have to be willing to see through the propaganda and look at the evidence of what they're doing to these families. Not what they're saying, but what they're actually doing.
Yeah. And what they're doing is horrific. I mean,
It's
like I said, our first talk definitely opened our eyes to it, the whole team. And I mean, we're definitely not going to give up on it. We're going to keep pushing for y'all and anybody else. I mean, some of the names you named out, I looked up, like Jamie and Floyd Williams, over allegations and basically, being disciplined is what it looks like to me. When you mentioned the Sharps on the last interview, is that the same family that they're going after taking their kids because they were singing in the protests?
Yeah, I don't know everything about that case, but yeah, now that I've gotten more detail, some of those allegations sound very horrible, and they've been trying to go after this woman for a very long time. And I tried to put out, Kansas City, Fox News, I think it was, did an article on Ms. Sharp and explained about all this tearful testimony in the courtroom. It was a very compelling article. I'd encourage everyone to look at that article. It makes you want to look at Ms. Sharp and say, boy, you're a horrible child abuser. But the question I had that nobody asked is, how did they get that information? The court hearings are closed. No media are allowed. No family are allowed. the only people that are allowed are caseworkers, attorneys, judges, and that's it. So where did they get this compelling testimony? Where did they see the father break down in tears while they were giving testimony on the stand? It's suspect from the gate because they gag order parent for the information that was released by that newspaper. I've seen parents like Jamie and Floyd get threatened with 6 months in jail. So how did the media get away?
For basically
So,
just talking.
well, excuse me. Yeah, for just giving details of the case. They can't give any details. Then how did the media get a hold of this elaborate story of what happened in the hearing? Unless it was either A, spoon-fed to them by the government, they just made it up. I don't know. But that's the problem is you see a family and then the government comes out with these, well, she beat the child till his nose bled, or this happened or that happened. There's no evidence. Another question I asked is like with Miss Sharp, if she really beat her kids that bad, why wasn't she charged with the crime?
Well, everything I pulled up on it, I actually only came across one article. I didn't note down what article this one was from about anything of allegations of abuse. They were basically taking her kids because they were singing at protests, and some were armed militants, as they were calling it. Just basically, American
No,
militia.
there's more articles out there now. That's what started it. They've come after her children multiple times. They don't like homeschooling families. They don't like families where the kids aren't already in the system where they can brainwash and control them. So those kind of families are targeted anyways. They get these homeschooling families because there's been more articles. One, she had a temporary custody hearing, and that's where all this really evil testimony came out. And you see all these people in the comments saying, "Oh, she's put in prison," blah blah blah, and that was my question for people: is we have child abuse laws. We have laws on assault and battery. I can discipline my child, but if I abuse my child in a manner physically, I'll go to jail. It's real cut and dry. So if they had this evidence of her abusing her kids in this manner, why wasn't she charged with a crime? Because it probably never happened. But because they're controlling this narrative and the media is working in collusion, instead of holding them accountable and saying, well, where's your proof of this? They just blah, blah, blah and work hand in hand because we all know this is why you do what you do. A lot of the mainstream media is just propaganda. I don't know if you have enough to update, but really, we're just putting a call out right now. We're thinking how we can step up our game. We're trying to get some federal action done in our lawsuit, put some kind of injunction out there or temporary restraining order, try to get my kids out of their custody, try to restrain them from destroying the records. But they've had so much time to, and they're all trying by, and these are just my assumptions from what I'm getting, but why would they say we're lying about the court report unless they're trying to alter it? I didn't, the court report is a court report. I don't even know where those people got it, but, we had an incident when we leaked but there were some files that were leaked from a media agency about a child that died in DCF custody in Kansas. After that story was released, we actually did a live stream of it on Facebook where that night there was a leak at DCF. They had fire trucks, ambulances, all this stuff. And we went there. The first question we asked them is, isn't it a major gas leak? You shut all the electrical power off. Why are all the lights turned on? They were obviously in there going through desks, going through files, trying to clean up, find out where the leaker was that was getting given the information to the media that was out there with us. And I don't think these people are beyond that. They realize if all of this gets out, their careers are ruined and their liberty may be over. And so they're dangerous people, but we need to stand up irrespective of our differences, religious or otherwise, or political or otherwise, and realize there is a tyrannical system that is stealing children and destroying families. And if we don't band together and somehow combat them where it's hottest, our battle is hot right now, and we need to maintain pressure on these people so that we can start seeing some cracks in their facade and get some victory here. But if people leave us to the wolves, this is going to spill over and affect everybody in this country.
Well, hopefully we can open up enough eyes. Maybe sometimes all it takes is just that one person to see it. You know, that one person with the right pull. And that's what we hope for.
Well, and I hope so. I hope so too. But really appreciate what you guys are doing and everything you're trying to do for our family and the issue in general, because you don't even have to, you know, things that's going on with us, the medical cannabis and stuff, to understand that these people really are destroying families, even families that don't even have some of the allegations leveled against them that were leveled against us. That's simply just medical kidnapping. They just, say your baby's failing to thrive, so we're taking it, and then they define what failure to thrive means. So it's a very dangerous system, and we encourage everyone to continue to take a look at it and help us.
We're definitely going to keep digging. Any updates, please keep us posted, and we look forward to chatting with you again. Hope we can get you back on here again soon.
We'll definitely keep you updated. Thanks.
All right, have a good one, man.